The Sony Bravia 9 absolutely crushes the LG G5 in bright rooms. We're talking 3000 nits that make daytime sports look surreal. But the second you dim the lights, the G5 does something the Bravia physically can't. Perfect blacks that make space scenes feel like you're looking out a window. Here's the catch. The G5's OLED magic comes with a brightness ceiling that tanks its HDR in one specific scenario. And the Bravia's mini LED advantage? It creates a dark room problem. Sony definitely doesn't print on the box. So which one should you actually buy? That depends on one thing about your room. If you're looking for the best deal on either of these, I've included updated links in the description, so check those out for the latest prices and availability. Let's start with something you notice before picture quality even enters the conversation. The LG G5 looks like wall art. It's incredibly thin, about an inch, and it sits almost flush against the wall with the included mount. If your TV is part of your decor, or you want that clean gallery look, the G5 nails that feeling instantly. And you can sit anywhere in the room. Off to the side, on the floor, the picture stays perfect. The Bravia 9? Completely different approach. It's thicker, heavier. You can feel the mini LED hardware inside, but that weight makes it rock solid on the stand. No wobbling when someone walks by. If you're not wall mounting, the Sony actually feels more confidence-inspiring. Now, here's where your room starts influencing the decision. The G5 has a glare-free coating that feels almost like cheating. Sunlight, lamps, windows behind you, the reflections just soften and disappear. The screen never turns into a mirror, and that alone can save you a ton of frustration during the day. The Bravia 9 handles reflections pretty well too, but at certain angles you'll catch this subtle rainbow shimmer. It's not dramatic, but if you've got a big window directly across from the TV, it's something you'll see now and then. So even before we power these on, your room is already making this decision easier. Bright rooms with windows, the G5 gives you the cleaner, more forgiving experience. More control lighting or a stand setup, the Bravia's build feels reassuringly solid. But this is just the warm-up. Once we turn these on, that's where the real separation begins. Now let's turn these on, and if your living room has windows, this is where everything changes. The Bravia 9 was built for daylight. The moment something bright hits the screen, sports, YouTube, even a plain white web page, you see exactly why Sony pushed mini LED this far. It peaks around 3000 nits. But the impressive part isn't the number. It's how the brightness stays consistent across the whole screen. If you watch TV during the day, it feels incredible. Sunlight pouring in, doesn't matter. The Bravia just blasts right through it. Football games look almost surreal. Bright jerseys, helmet, reflections, scoreboard graphics, everything stays crisp and vibrant instead of turning gray. This is where the Bravia dominates. The G5 is brighter than any OLED before it, around 2300 nits. But here's where OLED hits a wall. When too much of the screen gets bright, it automatically dims to protect itself. And in a bright room, that's exactly the moment you need all the brightness you can get. This catches people off guard. If you watch a lot of daytime sports or your room gets direct sunlight, the G5 simply can't match what the Bravia delivers. The contrast is still gorgeous. OLED always nails that. But the raw punch disappears in big bright scenes. Now the G5's glare-free coating does help, even though the Bravia is technically brighter. The G5 kills reflections better, so the image stays clean and surprisingly usable. It holds its own. It just can't match that jaw-dropping impact. Bottom line for daytime viewing, if your room gets natural light and you watch before sunset, the Bravia 9 was made for this. The G5 survives, the Bravia dominates, but once you dim the lights, everything flips. Now let's flip it. Lights off, curtains closed. The moment the room goes dark, the LG G5 takes over. OLED isn't about better blacks, it's pixels shutting off completely. So when a movie cuts to space or a character steps into shadow, the screen just disappears. The panel vanishes and you're watching an image float in darkness. It's a completely different kind of immersion. The Bravia 9 gets impressively close. Sony's processing really is that good. But this is where the limits of zones show up. In a dark room, those zones reveal themselves. Tiny halos around bright objects or black backgrounds. They're subtle, but once you spot them in a star field or a candlelit scene, you can't unsee them. Meanwhile, the G5 stays perfectly clean. No hazing, no blooming around edges, just pure contrast. Scenes feel deeper, shadows have more shape, and colors look richer because nothing is bleeding through from behind the panel. Now, OLED isn't perfect. When a large portion of the screen gets bright, a giant explosion, a game HUD with bright white areas, the G5 may pull back its overall brightness to protect the panel. It's subtle, more people never notice it unless they're looking for it, but yes, the Bravia hits harder in those specific big bright flash moments. Still, for movie watching at night, it's not even close. The G5 feels cinematic in a way the Bravia physically can't match. You sit down, the lights go off, and the whole room becomes part of the picture. That's why people who watch mostly in the dark end up choosing OLED every time they see it side by side. In a bright room, the Bravia owns the fight, but in a dark room, the G5 doesn't just win, it changes the mood of the entire space. And speaking of mood, gaming brings out an even bigger difference. If gaming is even a small part of your setup, the gap becomes obvious immediately. The LG G5 is a gaming machine. It gives you 4 HDMI 2.1 ports, 4K at 165Hz, and incredibly fast response times. Input lag? Around 9 milliseconds. Everything feels crisp, instant, and smooth. Shooters, racing games, open world titles, it all just flows. And dark gaming environments? Unbelievable. Shadows look real, bright elements pop without any blur or haze, and the whole thing feels like playing on a giant gaming monitor. The Bravia 9 can handle gaming just fine, but it hits a ceiling quickly. You only get 2 HDMI 2.1 ports. PS5, Xbox, PC, soundbar through eARC, you'll run out fast. It tops out at 4K 120. The response times are slower, and you'll feel a bit more delay compared to the G5. Subtle, but once you've played on both, you'll notice it. Sony does have a couple of PS5-friendly tricks, auto HDR tone mapping, auto genre switching, and they help, but they don't close the gap. The G5 simply gives you more headroom, more ports, and more responsiveness. For gaming, it's ahead by a wide margin. The only time the Bravia really makes sense for gamers is if you're deep in the PS5 ecosystem. You mostly stick to console titles, and your room gets tons of daylight. Otherwise, if gaming is even 20 to 30% of your usage, the G5 pulls away quickly. So at this point, that's 3 rounds. Bright rooms go to Sony, dark rooms go to LG, gaming goes to LG. But there's one wildcard left that can flip this entire decision, and it has nothing to do with picture quality. Let's talk about the things that don't show up on spec sheets but matter every single day. First, the software. Google TV on the Bravia is simple and familiar. LG's WebOS looks cleaner and offers smarter recommendations. But neither one should drive your decision. They're both fast, reliable, and you'll adapt to either within a week. Sound familiar? Similar story. Sony speakers have more presence, especially for voices. The G5 speakers sound thinner by comparison. Most people add a soundbar anyway, so this matters, but barely. Reliability, this is where it matters. The Bravia 9 has zero burn-in risk. Static logos, sports stickers, YouTube sidebars, leave them on forever. Mini LED is bulletproof. The G5 has modern protections, and burn-in is rare, but the risk isn't zero. Mixed content, you're safe. But if you watch news channels for hours every day or game with HUDs on screen all evening, Sony is the anxiety-free choice. Now, price. This is the wild card. The G5's MSRP is higher, but it goes on sale constantly. Hundreds off, sometimes $1,000 during major sales. The Bravia barely moves, so depending on when you buy, the G5 can actually end up cheaper, which makes its dark room and gaming dominance even more attractive. Alright, here's what it all comes down to. Remember at the beginning when I said this whole decision depends on one thing about your room? Here it is. Do you watch more in a bright room or a dark room? If your living room has windows, you watch during the day, and sports or YouTube are part of your routine, the Bravia 9 was built for you. It punches through daylight, stays bright across the whole screen, and you never think about burn-in. But if you watch mostly at night, movies and series matter to you, or gaming is even 20 to 30% of your usage, the LG G5 is the clear winner. Dark room immersion, the Sony can't match. Gaming specs that blow past it. The real-world prices that often drop surprisingly low. Both are incredible TVs, but for your setup, one of them is clearly the right call. Look, the Bravia dominates bright rooms. The G5 dominates dark rooms and gaming. The only mistake is buying based on hype instead of your actual space. Current deals are linked below. Both drop in price regularly. And if you want more breakdowns like this, I've got you covered. See you next time.